I go right down the driveway, right away, not looking, between two parked cars, and the car coming down the street hit me and basically ran me over and kept going. So I was underneath the vehicle, and I'm noticing how vibrant all the colors are, how much more real, and I can have that retrospection now, but how much more alive that place felt to me. I realized that the colors were their own sovereign beings, that they were intelligent. And I see these lines just start going almost like a grid pattern, tic-tac-toe. They're going down, they're going across, and then they tell me this is the quantum field. Human beings build their reality with a connection to this field through their thoughts and their emotions. And it was like I felt every single emotion I've ever had in my entire life and every memory separate, but at the same time. It was separate, but it was simultaneously.
This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my guest today, Steve Noack. Hello, Steve.
Hi.
It is wonderful to have you here today. I listened to you talking at the IANS conference, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And as I listened to your near-death experience, it's one of those where I realize that there is so much more beyond what I've even considered. There was just so much to your near-death experience. And I know my audience would love to hear it. And it took place when you were 4 years old. So can you take us to that day that you had your near-death experience and then just step us through everything?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate the time to share my story. It wasn't always easy. So I was 4 years old. I was run over by a car while riding a big wheel, which is a small plastic tricycle. And I was across the street from my house. I'm on my big wheel. And my brother comes to the sidewalk where our house was across the street, and he says, "We're going to the mall. Come on, let's go. Hurry up." And all I see was bells going off. That means toys. The mall had toys. It was the coolest thing ever. So I say, "Oh, okay." And I go right down the driveway, right away, not looking, between two parked cars, and the car coming down the street hit me and basically ran me over and kept going. So I was underneath the vehicle. The only thing that saved me from being run over by the tires and keeping me in the middle of the car, dragged along the road on my face, was my big wheel, because that got wedged under the back tire. The woman she was drinking at the time too, so she didn't know she actually hit a child. So people came out of their house, stopped her. But what I remember specifically, it's like a blur. And then the next thing I remember seeing, and it took a while to get these memories back. It was like age 11 when they all just started coming in. Maybe puberty opened them up. But what I remember is being above myself instantly, just a blur, and then seeing myself, and I see my eyes roll in the back of my head. And for some reason, my shirt was gone. I was like looking at my chest and my face, and I see my eyes roll back in my head. And then the screen just fades, like a movie ended, and then it opens up again. And I'm sitting. As it opens up, I'm sitting, and the first sensation I get is that I'm leaning on someone, and they're sort of holding me. And my head is down. I just opened my eyes, and I notice hair, like the bottom of someone's hair that was almost hitting the ground, and it was silver, and it was like luminescent, kind of hard to describe with our color base here. And I see the bottom of a robe, no feet, just a robe, hair, because I'm leaning, open my eyes, and I think to myself, who is this, And I turned expecting a person to be holding me, because I'm still in somewhat a state of, what happened. And as I turn and look, it's this hooded being of light, and it's just light where their face should be. So I'm expecting a person, and I turn, and there's a hooded figure of light. I ask them what happened, and they say, "Stephen, you were in an accident. Put your head down. Everything's going to be okay." So I put my head down, and I'm now just looking at this face. Some fleeting thoughts about, where am I? What's going on? Who is this? But they're quick. And I remember having a quick thought about, we just talked without talking, and I'm staring at the face. And before you know it, I'm feeling pulled, like there's something pulling at me, and I'm getting stretched out into this light being's face, into their hood. So I'm going through this light where their face, should be. And then a scene just kind of starts to materialize as I feel like really stretched out, almost like a rubber band. Scene starts to materialize, and it's flowers, it's meadows, there's a path, there's rivers, and I'm noticing how vibrant all the colors are, how much more real, and I can have that retrospection now, but how much more alive that place felt to me. I realized that the colors were their own sovereign beings, that they were intelligent. The flowers, and it was so many more colors than we have here. And I noticed there's people. I can see kind of people in the distance over these little hills on these paths, and they're playing, and I can see their silhouettes. They're dancing and playing. And I'm just looking around at the colors and the butterflies, and it's all going through the air, and it's just amazing to feel. And so I'm witnessing some people in the distance, and I notice one is an old man, and they're off to my left, and there's a little girl, and they're playing, and they're far away, but they're right next to me. And, those are some things I still have trouble describing to people. They were over there, but they were right near me. And they're playing, and I get to sense that there's, a lot of happy here. And as this girl lets out a laugh as they're playing, she lets out a laugh, and it comes through the air, and it comes over to me, and it hits me right in the center. And it was instantly, I knew that everything came from this place, and everything would circuit back to it eventually. And that the only thing that could exist there was love. Pain, suffering, all that stuff can't exist there. It was like it didn't have function or form. It wasn't the right match. And so I feel this love come over me, and I know that's my home, and I want to stay there. And they say, "Well, Stephen, it's not your time yet. We have other things that we're going to show you." So the screen just changes. It was like somebody just pulled the curtain, and I'm standing in this room that's kind of dark like a night sky, but not pitch black. And I see these lines just start going almost like a grid pattern, tic-tac-toe. They're going down, they're going across, and then they tell me this is the quantum field. Human beings build their reality with a connection to this field through their thoughts and their emotions. And I'm simply immersed in this, A lot of this I'm digesting for later. But I'm immersed. I'm just feeling it and witnessing it. And I'm saying, okay. The next thing was those lines kind of dissipated. And I noticed this. It was almost like a credit card with a missing corner, and it had circuits on it like a motherboard. And I see it way in the distance, and I'm kind of curious about it. And they tell me that's your divine blueprint. That's your original image, the image of God that you were made from. And every human being possesses this for redemption. They simply need to believe this is their identity rather than what the world is giving them. So that kind of fades away. Then the next thing is like I'm standing in a skybox almost, and I'm looking down on something, and I see this pillar of light come down in the center, and they tell me this pillar of light is you. As you came into the world, you were love. And then you spent your energy and will be spending your energy to have an experience with material reality as an energy. And so as they say that, I see these cords kind of going out from this pillar. They're going out to what I notice now is like a screen that's all the way around me. And I see these little images at the end of this cord. I'm like trying to see where it goes. So in this screen are all these little, almost like TVs, like they're like televisions, and they're having images in them. And they tell me these are memories and experiences. Everything you do here is recorded down to every thought, every emotion. So I realized, okay, I'm seeing memories, but I don't know what any of it means. And so I'm just watching and agreeing with them. Then they tell me this is like a life review, but you're going to have your life review while you're alive. And this process is called ascension. And that kind of winds down. And then the next thing I know is I see a triangle just light up in front of me, and it's coming at me, and it's really large. And they tell me this is Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, and the Holy Son. Make these three one. And I'm like, okay. And then that passes. Now, a lot of this would be referenced much later that I would draw on from that information, but they taught me about the Trinity. They taught me about my divine blueprint, my higher self, basically. And then some of the mechanisms that were behind reality. Now, that winds down, and so my experience is over. I wake up, and I'm talking to my parents, and I'm asking them what happened. And they're like, you were in an accident, and it just didn't feel right. I was like, no, what happened? Something else happened. Because I could still feel it in my body, but I couldn't describe it. I couldn't put it into words. I couldn't intellectualize it at 4 years old, but I understood, no, something else happened. It felt different than just an accident. So about 7 years passed, and that's when I started to have the first memories of sitting with this being. And then I was like, yeah, something did happen. And it was a small confirmation for me. And I tried to talk about it, and it just made me feel awkward. Like either people didn't want to hear it, or they were looking at me like I was strange. So I kind of tucked it away. And slowly, more and more of the memories came back, more and more of the feeling, until it was the strongest memory I had. It was like, you try to remember what you had for lunch 3 weeks ago on a Wednesday. Like literally, this was like remembering it had just happened. And I was having emotional reactions. So I'm like, okay, something did happen. Maybe it's just for me. It's a memory of the past. And I kind of put it away, went and lived a pretty normal life. Never realizing how much that event affected me as far as sensitivity, being around people, other energies I was feeling that I couldn't really discern or interpret. But the one thing was that love. And that was something that I had forgotten because I had lost my identity in the world in this little intermission. So I get the memories back. I'm starting to hide them. Don't need to talk about it anymore. It's over and done with. So 33 years later, I'm just a regular store manager at a well-known video game retailer. And I'm going to have surgery. And I'm getting very panicked. I hadn't had any medication yet. I'm at the hospital. I'm getting really panicked, and I'm like, I gotta leave, and I don't know why. And so I went to sit up to leave, and then I hear a voice say to me, Stephen, put your head down. Everything's gonna be fine. Now that's exactly what they said to me at 4. Stephen, you were in an accident. Put your head down. Everything's gonna be fine. And I instantly recognized the voice. And when I recognized it, it was like all these walls. I was like, how's this possible? And it was like, I felt this energy shoot through me. And I had like, I can't tell you how many visions within like a millisecond. It was like somebody hit rewind on a tape reel, and it was like, do, 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 do. So all these visions and this energy flowing through me. I go and I have the surgery. Um, when the voice said to me, Stephen, put your head down, everything's going to be all right. I felt the energy, just the love. And I sat back and I was like, yeah, everything's okay. And then that's when the vision started. So I go and I have the surgery. I come home, and probably within like a week or two, I start to see balls of light in my room. Like, and I'm questioning myself. Am I crazy? Is there a lamp there? No, there's no lamp. There's no reflection. That's literally a ball of light. It's not, it's there. I can see it. It's material. Um, and so this happened for a few nights, and I'm starting to question myself. I go back to work. Now I'm starting to hear people's thoughts in my mind. And I would start to play these games at work where I would ask them in my head, do you need any help? Do you need a bag with that? And then I would ask them out loud, and I would see if it matched, because I was trying to figure out if I was crazy or not. This was really the beginning of these supernatural experiences, because up till that point, that to me was a past memory. And I was skeptic, because I figured, well, I experienced this beautiful place at 4, and then junk after, and a lot of suffering, and a lot more pain. So maybe if there is a God, he doesn't like me. So that's where I was at that point in my life. Once they started to return. So I would hear customers' thoughts, and then it slowly began where I would start laughing for no reason. I would start crying for no reason. I would start to feel this whoosh go through me, and I couldn't control it. So now my assistant manager's like, man, are you okay? And people are asking questions because it was so strong, I couldn't control it. And it eventually graduated into feeling who was hungry. I could feel and pinpoint who was hungry around me, because I would feel hungry after just eating a full meal. That person would walk away, I'd be fine. So eventually I figured that out too. And it got really intrusive, like so intrusive that I was having a hard time functioning at work, questioning myself. Then the supernatural experiences just got weirder and weirder. I went to the gas station on a break, lunch, pay for gas. I have this man and his son are standing in line in front of me, and he asked his father, can I get this Reese's peanut butter cup? And the father says, yeah, sure. And the kid goes and gets it, and he picks it up and he shows it to him. Okay. And then he does the same exact thing, and he only grabs one. And the cashier did the same exact thing too. And I was like, what the hell just happened? Something weird happened. But I was like, all right, paid for my stuff, went to my car, and I started the car, and then the radio was already going. So there's a woman, she's winning a radio contest. And I'm hearing him talk about the answer. And then all of a sudden, the phone's ringing on the radio, and it's the woman, and she's answering the question. They're asking her the question that I had just heard her answer. And I was like, all right, do I need to check myself into the hospital here? Like, what's going on? So that day after work, I started to try to go to every church I could find, like, just to talk to somebody. I knew something was happening and it was coming from God, but I couldn't quite put my thought on it. I didn't understand anything. But I started to get this energy in me, and it felt like I had a nuclear reactor in my stomach, and I couldn't sleep for days. And I would instantly just get these thoughts. We're in a spiritual war for our energy. And just these things about quantum physics and how to deal with things and how things worked. And I never went to college. I didn't study any of that. So I'm trying to hold the seams together while I'm going to work. I'm driving home one day, and I'm beating myself up. And I hear this voice come off to my right. And it starts telling me all these beautiful things about myself, all these people that loved me, all these people that I touched and that had helped, I had helped throughout my life. And most of all, how beautiful and valuable I was. And I felt it. And I was like, this is strange. I didn't really trust it. I didn't trust a lot of what was happening. So I asked the voice, who are you? Tell me who you are. And the voice just says, I am. And then I'm like, yeah, I am who? And then the voice repeats it, I am. And then I got a little more elevated. Yeah, I heard you the first time. I am who? And then I hear, I am. And on the third one, it was like a shock. It was like a reflex or a shock to my system. And all this emotion came up and visions along with the emotions and memories that I experienced. And it was like I felt every single emotion I've ever had in my entire life and every memory separate, but at the same time. It was separate, but it was simultaneously. And I still, wonder, was that the initiation of my singularity? Was that me breaking this circuit of time? So I had the I am experience. I start going back to churches. I'm finding a lot of the doors are locked. So I sit there and I cry, and I had no idea why, but I was full of all this emotion and this need to get closer to that love again, like starting to feel my energy kind of shift. So a few weeks later, I start to see apparitions around me. I start to notice things passing by me, and I'm like, was that something that just moved? No. So I'm ignoring it. And eventually they start to get bigger. They start to grow into full blown apparitions to where you could see the silhouette of a person. They're moving back and forth. Eventually, and some are smoky, some are dark, some are light. But it was just a silhouette of an energy. They were just constantly moving. And eventually I start engaging them like, hey, you don't belong here. I think I'm being haunted. They start engaging me like back, not saying nice things. A lot of the things like, oh, you'll never be anything. Oh, you're unlovable. You're going to hell. Nobody loves you. You'll never get anything right in your life. Basically telling me I'm a piece of crap. Now, there were some nice voices in there. There were some humans in there. But what I had awoken to was whatever was going on behind my reality, the things I had created up to that point. At that point in my life, I was depressed. I was addicted. I was overwhelmed with so much physical pain from my accidents, crashing motorcycles after that, rolling cars over, that I was in a hurting state. So it took me a little while to realize, a lot of this sounds familiar, and it sounds how I used to speak to myself is how a lot of these voices sounded. Um, so I'm dealing with that now. Going to work, still having all the psychic stuff happen. And this is the first time in my life I'm experiencing energies this strong. And a woman falls down outside of my store during this time. She falls down, she's hurt, and she's elderly woman, hit the cement. I was the first one to see her. She's in a lot of pain. And so I tell someone from the store next door, go get, call an ambulance. I stay there with her. And for some reason, I put my hand on her back, and I really wasn't that kind of person at the time. I was like, everybody leave me alone, angry at the world. So I put my hand on her back, and she looked at me, and she goes, I'm all warm, and I don't feel any pain. And I felt the warmth go up my arm. The EMTs came, and I'm like, that was weird. And I went back to my job. That's what my head was doing with all this stuff that was happening to me. But eventually, the visit by the Arcturians would help me understand a lot of what I saw being applied to the now journey. I don't know if you want to break it all.
This is probably a good place to break, and we will take it from here. We'll go ahead and do that in part 2. So wonderful to talk to Steve. And his story gets even more fascinating, even more complex. There is so much that is coming up in part 2, and it may take some of you out of your comfort zone. Here's a look.
We're here to help you upgrade because you're going to help humanity with its evolution of consciousness and eventually evolution of its species. So the more I believed I am my divine blueprint, I'm just an image of God experiencing this place, the more I was able to experience the richness and the fullness and the love that was here. Everybody's connected to the quantum field, so we all have this available to us, and everybody has an image that's untarnished that they were made in. But do you believe you are that, or do you want to continue to believe you're what the world tells you are? Because that's not what you are.
Okay, so there is going to be a lot of information coming at you in part 2, and I do suggest that you watch it and watch it with an open mind. Take from it what feels right to you. I would love to know what you thought, though, about part 1. I mean, part 1's really interesting, too. All that he experienced and all that he learned, all that he went through, the things that started happening to him. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you prefer just to say, I made it, that is great as well. If you want to say thank you to Steve or something like that, feel free to do that. Anything. I really just appreciate you connecting with me and just helping out my podcast. Thank you to, of course, always for your likes and for subscribing. For those of you that have subscribed and you've hit the little alert button, don't count on YouTube to alert you and don't count on YouTube to send my shows out to you because it doesn't always do it. So please always come looking for my shows. I drop new episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can always find all of that in my playlist. And of course, as you probably know, there's a link to my playlist right in the description of every single episode. You can also just type in the search Beyond with Heather Tesch, and you'll find it there. And it's Tesch for my last name. Thank you, everybody, for being here. You know how grateful I am for you. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day. And part 2 is interesting, so I do hope you'll come back. Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.